There we go. Okay.
So first order of business is to approve the minutes of April 13th, 2023. I'd entertain a motion.
Well, actually, Pete wasn't here, and neither were
Right.
you. And I'm the one who wrote
And
that.
I wasn't, so maybe we can't.
Hold off on that. Okay.
Okay. Next item, update from Derlin regarding Spectrum 100% coverage cost proposal.
Yeah, Kathy and I were just sort of describing that. I think we're quite a ways along on this now, Scott. I think all we have to do at this point is we know that the amount of money that we have is suitable to Spectrum to complete the project. Now, all we have to do, assuming Acadia Park is interested in servicing those addresses, what we have to do is determine what those addresses are and what percentage of that money would be spent by the park. So I think that's basically getting the details of how the split would be is where we are. And then, of course, the last step on our behalf would be to go to the select board and ask for that release of that ARPA money, which I think would be a formality at this point because it isn't a huge amount and we don't have any other targets for it at this point. So.
Keith, do you have or Kevin, do you have any information? Did the park share information with Brian Lippold about the unknown addresses?
I can't answer that. I know Brandon was going to be talking with our GIS specialist to determine those locations, but I wasn't CC'd on an email going to Brian. So, but we can follow up with Brandon and see if that was done.
Okay. Because I think that was the next step to find out what those locations were so that the park knows, see if you want those done as well. And then we can identify. I think we're going to need some details to figure out exactly where everything's going and what kind of mileage is involved and just do simple math. If it's X number of dollars, it's X number per miles. And we can figure out a division of cost that way, I think. Does that make sense?
It does. That does make sense. I think the other piece we're following up on is what will be the mechanism and can we move monies from the NPS to the town of Mount Desert. I've got a proposal in for a mechanism, agreement type mechanism that's being reviewed by a solicitor to tell us whether we got the kind of the right mechanism. And I hope to have an answer within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's great.
I should note that Kevin and Keith, both former students of mine, welcome.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So
and
yeah,
one of my kids.
yeah, exactly. And that's right. So Kathy, just because I missed the last meeting and I apologize, but I'm just trying to figure out how the park dovetails with what we have to do.
Well, so out of that list of 38 addresses, some of them are absolutely within park territory. And we noted last time that there are several that go to the Jordan Pond House or Wildwood Stables, some to Blackwoods Campgrounds, but there are some locations that are unclear exactly what they are. So Brian Lippold offered to give Acadia National Park some GIS data, some location data, so they could identify what buildings they're talking about. And then the park could determine, yes, we want service there, or no, we don't need it. But for those ones that we do know about, they do want to have service there. And so the park owns the poles and the power lines within park territory, but not necessarily the communication lines there. And so we need to have that final information to say, yes, we want, out of the 38, we want, all of them, or 37 or 36, 35, whatever number it is.
That's going to help determine those
Exactly.
actual, yeah, I got you.
Exactly. What the final cost will be and the park is engaged in paying their portion of whatever the final total is. Spectrum has told us that $150,000 would be wanted from the town, but we want to share that with the park based on the number of addresses that are on parkland. And so we need to get that kind of information so we can all figure out who's paying what share of this $150,000. And on top of that, the other complication is, can the park pay Spectrum directly, or does the park need to give money to the town so that the town pays Spectrum directly, et cetera? So that's the proposal that Kevin is talking about. Just the mechanism for following the money.
Yeah. So Kevin, do you think, I know, I guess you have to have a crystal ball, but do you think we would be in a place, we always meet each month, do you think by next month we'll have an answer?
Yes, I think by next month, we'll have an answer back from the solicitor if this is the right mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, our next meeting, we could probably be ready to move forward, or what do you think, Darrell? Do we wait?
Yeah, once we get that number, then I'll check with my finance guy about, how that thing would all structure through, and he'd have to set up an account to take in the park money, those basic things. And then, of course, we'd have a meeting with the select board. So with any luck, if things work, we could have that all done in early July, probably, if all the pieces went together fast. Certainly, I would think before the summer is over, we should be able to have that all wrapped up. I don't see any reason why not.
I think my only the unknown is if they come through and say the mechanism is appropriate and we have to go through the agreement process, how long will that agreement process take is a little bit of an unknown to me.
Yeah.
So then I'd be talking with the regional agreements office. We'd be trying to come up, draft that language for the agreement. I would hope that process wouldn't take too long, but having not walked this particular agreement through, it's a little unknown.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, what my feeling is, once we know what the process is, and then the timetable will take care of itself. It is what it is.
Yep.
As long as we know what we're doing, then we'll be able to accomplish it. So.
And I think if we have more detailed information on the locations and distances, and we can calculate, just a per mile cost, then we can figure out what the cost sharing should be between the town and the park.
So Spectrum never teased that out?
They gave us a flat fee because they knew how much money we had.
I get that.
And so we don't have a breakdown on the cost of that or on the miles. They said, you've got this much money, that's good. We'll put in this much money. But I don't think we have a detail yet on how many miles everything is. And if the park wants to hook up all of the places that were identified and still unknown. The ones they know they want to do it. But if it's a shed that doesn't need any kind of access, then let's not do that. So
I think when Spectrum did that, they assumed that all those were within the town of Mount Desert. So they did not bother to break it down and just say, you give us this much and we'll connect all of these places if you want. So.
And Brandon Bice was the person who was here at the last meeting and was going to be doing some of the legwork to figure out what information they needed, because Brian will give them the GIS data. But he is now out of the state. And so he's coming back fairly soon. So we're hoping that he can pick this up again when he gets back. So.
Sure. Yeah, he'll be back next week.
Good.
So we're just in a holding pattern on this particular thing.
Okay. So is there anything else we need?
Because it's a small project, Kathy, compared to the last one, but this is moving at warp speed compared to the Pretty Marsh project. Obviously, so.
It doesn't feel like warp speed, but
well, if you're dealing with the state and the federal government,
Exactly.
the local governments, believe me, this is warp speed.
And a national corporation like Time Warner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
so is there anything else we need from Kevin or Keith at this point, or can we let them go?
I think, unless there's something else you all need to share with us about what you have learned. You don't know if Brian Lippold of Casco Bay has received the specifics of the unknown yet, correct?
That I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Well, thank you, Kevin and Keith. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining with us, and we look forward to moving forward together with it.
Right on. Thank you, guys.
All right,
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Looking forward to that partnership.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next item. Brian's not with us, is he, Kathy?
He is not, but he did share with us an email that, again, had very little information in it. Let me go back and find his email. He had been reaching out to both Spectrum and Consolidated. And so he wrote us recently that he had been in touch with Melinda at Spectrum. She believes the ball is in the town's court at this point. And wondered, are the town and the park ready to move forward with an agreement with Spectrum? And if so, we should ask them for a contract for implementation. And so clearly we're not ready for that yet. So
Well, hopefully June.
yeah. Regarding Consolidated, he had been in conversation with Sarah from Consolidated Communications and shared with us his email to her, which confirmed the conversation they had on May 5th, that as a result of Consolidated's recent reorganization of its Fidium Network Planning Organization, they, Consolidated, are unable to advise the towns of Bar Harbor, Mount Desert, Southwest Harbor, and Tremont how much of a subsidy will be required to deploy the Fidium service to 100% of each community at this time. He also asked and said, we would appreciate if Sarah would continue to advocate for these towns internally and look forward to the results when you're able to provide them. So he's been in conversation, pestering for information and not getting anywhere with Consolidated. Spectrum's waiting for us to take action.
I don't think Consolidated has any interest in us. But
can I ask you to confirm? She said that they can't speak to what a subsidy would be to put those 4 towns into their plan.
Yeah, I think the idea is that they wouldn't do it on their own. Consolidated is interesting in putting in installations where there's high density populations. And so places like Portland, Bangor, Boston, et cetera, that's where they're going to spend their own money. If a community like ours with a much lower density population is interested, we would have to subsidize them by giving them some money to install it. And so as of the last meeting, Brian shared that they had information for doing the island as a whole. They didn't tell him what that dollar figure was, but that they had it. Brian asked them, could they break it down by the 4 towns? Because he knows that each town is going to want to know what's our share of the cost, because, nobody wants to pay for another town's service. So again, we want to know what's the breakdown. And she did not have that information available. And so he's continuing to pressure them to determine what that is. But he also noted last time, and he stated it in his email to us, that they were going through some reorganization themselves. And so he said, they seem to have a different strategic plan every 90 days, So they're doing their own changes, and what's a priority and what is not a priority might change from, 1 month to 3 months from that. So, but right now we are just waiting to get any kind of information so we could have a breakdown. So.
Thank you. That's too bad.
Yes, it is.
so next item, League of Towns, Southwest Harbor approach.
Yes.
Yeah, now that they've had their new elections, will be interesting to see what the board over there is interested. Right now, they've sort of been kind of saying, well, you know, what we have, we're kind of satisfied with, because I think that they're going to be an outlier, possibly. I don't think they're going to necessarily jump at the opportunity to spend money to put fiber in with their current access rate on with Spectrum, but we'll see.
My son Chapin is now a selectman there.
Well, there you go. You can influence him.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I did join Derlin at the April 25th League of Towns meeting and told them, just brought them back to speed on what our committee is doing, and that we are trying to collaborate with Tremont, and that we know Bar Harbor is also working in the same direction. And so we wondered, Southwest Harbor, and she was there, the town manager was there, what about joining us? And she said, they don't get calls for problems. When people don't get service, they call the town and let them know, what are we doing about this? And they never get those kinds of calls. People they don't raise that as a concern or a problem. And so it hasn't risen to the level of town government trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. When we met last time, Elaine Eaton noted that, Tremont thought the same thing until we thought we had pretty good coverage, until we hired Casco Bay, and they did they did the drive-by and realized how many gaps there were. And so Southwest Harbor could be in the same kind of situation, but they won't know. And because people aren't complaining, it's not rising to a level of concern that they need to address. So
Comments?
no forward movement on engaging Southwest Harbor so far. So work on Chapin.
So discussion of next steps, I think we know what it is, right? We're gonna meet with, hopefully in our June meeting, is be able to get answers from the park.
Yes.
And then at that point, we'll have to, would Brian help figure out what that cost is and such once we identify?
Yes, I think that he can easily help us because of all the GIS information he has. He can determine road lengths and all of that. So I think that he would be helpful.
And that's the only thing I know of, right?
I have a thought. So it seems like things are moving in the right direction in terms of filling in our gaps in an affordable way with the Spectrum solution, and that seems like that's moving forward. I'm curious if two things. One is, should we have a mechanism for residents to easily tell us if they don't have service? I don't think we need another survey, but just maybe some way of promoting, maybe once we know that this is happening, promoting that we're doing this should cover 100%. And if you are not part of this plan, please let us know. Because I'm still a little bit concerned that it's going to be a slightly inaccurate. Maybe there are going to be some people we've missed. I know, the anecdotal evidence from our survey, there were people complaining down off of Bartlett's Landing Road. And then they said, well, that Spectrum said that they were covered. And so I think we should be aligned. And I don't know if there's a way to, in the annual letter out to residents, to just say, kind of a big thing, like, here's an email address to send if you have complaints. There's a way of collecting that near term and long term, kind of like a comment box, if you will, for broadband, so that people know how to talk to us. Does that make sense, do you think?
Yeah, I do.
And since
I know
housing,
I've gotten pretty good response when I've contacted Spectrum. They usually get back to me fairly quickly. Melinda Kinney's very good. I had an issue with one resident this week that had called up their customer service department and got some blowback from them. They didn't think that they were treated very courteously, so I sent Melinda a email, and they had a customer service rep on that case within a few hours. So pretty good response back on issues like that.
That's good. And I think that there is always the possibility that new houses, new developments will be coming up, and will they have service or not? So, it might be as part of either the town permitting process or the planning board process. If new things are going up, it's like, are they going to have access to broadband service?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if a lot of times, since internet is so important to people now, that they're arranging all this stuff while they're in the building process. Length from connections and all of that, because it's such a, I know realtors tell me that it's the first question anyone asks when they're buying. So I would assume when they're building that question would be pretty prominent.
Yeah, I think it would, because it's one of the kind of goals of the committee is to get everybody covered. Once we get this pass done, we should figure out how do we sustain that long term? What's the role? How does a committee continue to support that objective? And because it's going to be probably more of an ad hoc or one-off basis where there are going to be individual residents who are having trouble, maybe unable to afford the drop right down their driveway, or having problems, to Daryl's point, just dealing with spectrum, or new development, or new roads that are going to get put in potentially.
Yeah.
So it might be worth exploring what the long-term plan would be for that. And then my last thought was just looking at some of the other objectives of the committee in terms of equitable access, long-term, like fiber build out, and kind of how we want to start looking at that. So I guess I'm thinking forward near the end of the summer, once we hopefully get this contract done, be nice to kind of shift into a different phase for the committee and work on some of these other things.
That's true. Not going to
I'm
have fiber.
curious, Kathy, now that we know that Consolidated knows those figures, whether they would ever release them and how often it would take before those figures would be obsolete.
Well, I think that Brian is continuing to pressure them. And even if we just got an overall, what is it for the whole of the island, since they apparently had that dollar figure.
Yeah, I'd really like to know that. I'd be curious just to
know.
get that.
Exactly. And I think you're right, Pete. Eventually fiber will probably come, because that's just the way it's going, and Consolidated will continue to build, but we might not be, we're not high on their priority list, obviously. But they already have mechanisms in place with DSL all over the island as it is. So at some point they're going to be changing over. But it would be nice to do some outreach for digital literacy and et cetera, to make sure that everybody is connected, because I have had conversations with people who don't own a computer and are finding it very difficult, even sometimes, to just pay a bill if you don't go online to do it. And they're getting more and more challenges to how do I pay my electricity bill, or how do I do this? Or they don't even give me a bill. They don't mail me a bill anymore, those kinds of things. And so, and this is perfect tie-in to Genevieve's activity here, because that is her thing with the Island Institute, is digital equity, right?
Yeah, we're doing digital equity and inclusion. We just finished our big, we've been working with the regions in the state of Maine to design these regional plans for digital equity and inclusion. So I know we've made a bunch of proposals about, digital navigators in the area that would be able to help people kind of convert their bills to online once that service is built out and that sort of thing. So we're hoping to get some funding from NTIA from that coming down the pipeline in the next year. So it would pair really, really nicely with you folks building out as well. But right now we're still in that limbo game. And I can share out our regional equity plan with you folks as well if you want to provide feedback or comment on it. Love to hear thoughts as well. So I'll share that out.
Great.
Thank you.
Will you be mailing that? You can email that to us. Is that
I
something?
can email that if that works for you.
Yeah.
Kathy, I'll plan on just emailing it to your committee.
That would be great.
Awesome.
So Genevieve, I'm just curious, like, so some of this is having, you said like resources, ambassadors who are like can help people. Do you also do things like prepare material that goes into libraries or town offices? I would say put it on the town website, but that doesn't
Yeah.
really make sense. So do you do that kind of
So-
thing as well, or does that get out of date?
So the Island Institute has not been doing that. I know the Maine Connectivity Authority has some resources on their website in terms of like ACP, so signing people up for that benefit to get $30 off of their internet. So that information is online, but I think we're all kind of struggling with the budget this year. And so there's no funds available for printing costs. So that kind of falls on towns to be able to do. And then I know the National Digital Equity Center is planning on distributing some of those materials once they do become available. So that is another place to just keep your eyes and ears out. I'm not sure, we're still kind of in this planning phase at the Island Institute for the next 5 years as we transition away from doing this community work and more towards that digital equity side of things. So that's a great question, something for us to look into and discuss as we continue on this path of digital equity as people get their fiber.
Are you transitioning because a lot of the fiber build out is either underway or not going to happen, or like, is it like a natural evolution of kind of like almost in parallel to what we're doing, which is like, okay, we either can solve it or we can't solve it. Now let's move on.
So the Island Institute used to be an entity that provided towns with planning grants and funding, but MCA is doing a lot more of that work now. So MCA is kind of taking on the role that the Island Institute was playing. And we're actually stepping back. I think within the next 5 years, we'll be stepping back from broadband work entirely, because our goal is that within that time, everybody will be connected and there will be resources available. So that's kind of where the Island Institute's at with its transition phase as well. So just kind of beating the moment. But yeah, we're trying to figure out what that means and what that looks like, because it is a process that's going to take longer than 5 years. And I think we can all kind of recognize that. And there's plenty of delays with build out, and it'd be great to get everyone connected, but there's going to be hiccups along the road. So,
You know, one of the meetings that we had ages ago that some of us found very helpful was with the National Digital Equity Center and Susan Corbett. And for our committee work, maybe we should find ways to engage more with them if we want to move into this direction as well. So.
yeah, absolutely. And I think if you already have a connection with Susan, she's a wonderful resource. And I know, especially with the regional digital equity plans that we've been building, we're hoping to get a lot more funding for institutes like the National Digital Equity Center. So they'll have more digital navigators on the ground that we can deploy out into communities, more resources available for people, whether it be printed or online, to share out within your town halls or schools or what have you. So I think the National Digital Equity Center would be a wonderful person to bring to the table. And do you have Susan's email? Do you want me to share it?
I do, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
I met her when she was first setting up Axiom Technologies.
Gotcha.
So, and
Yeah,
I think
she's incredible.
it's a great story, you know, you have a need, you fix it.
Genevieve, this is Lily. I've been driving, listening in. This may be off topic, but how much are you seeing areas that have absolutely no access to internet out on outer islands that are using Starlink?
That's a great question. I do apologize. I'm pretty new to the broadband sphere, so I haven't done a ton of work with those outer islands. But I can forward that question along to Krista, because she was the one on the forefront of getting islands connected. I know for the most part, we've had pretty good luck getting islands connected. I know Frenchboro and Swans are a little bit behind, but I don't think Starlink is the primary internet use out on those islands. It's still a lot of DSL.
Right. I just know on the west side of Somme Sound, where there's some very, very, very long private roads that Spectrum has said, oh, absolutely, we can do it for this much.
Yeah.
Because it's way beyond the 300 feet, limit that they have. So it's quite interesting. And I had a homeowner who said, "What did I think of Starlink?" And I said, "I don't know. It seems to work around the world very, very well. I'm not sure whether the U.S. has really embraced that technology yet." But anyway,
I
Yeah,
know,
I know
Lily, a
some-
number of our clients have Starlink and they rave about it,
yep. Okay.
but it's not cheap. It's
Yeah, a lot
not
of
cheap, you
people-
know, it's one thing, you know, for people that have the means, that's, is a good alternative, but
Yeah, a lot of people in like rural Waldo County especially are using Starlink, but it's limited by the access you have to the sky. And so like there's weird cutouts during the day as satellites go behind mountains, that sort of thing. And then yeah, like so I was saying, like it's a $500 just to get the satellite dish and then a minimum $100 a month to enroll in that service. So it's not a cheap option for people, but it is working in communities where there aren't any other options.
well, all I know is I see a lot of fiber going up wherever I go. There seems to be they're stringing a lot of fiber.
Mhm.
And I do think, you know, once we fill these gaps, which is, I think, a key, because once everyone's in the system, then I do think the market is going to take care of a lot of it. But but that might be also the time that where we get all the towns together, if we make that last push of getting fiber to everywhere, where we at least have people covered, you know, with some sort of broadband internet, and maybe that's where the towns can get together.
Well, you remember Scott, and I know Derlin you remember, but I'm not sure whether anybody else on the call was the very first presentation that we ever had in Mount Desert on broadband. And, you know, and that whole conversation was around, we should just go right to fiber.
Yes.
You know, and the reaction we got was, I'm not spending $10 million on fiber, you know. Anyway, crazy.
But it would be good for us to also stay in a quick position so that when the towns start to coalesce, we can be on the forefront. We're not holding things back, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
and we can help facilitate that as much as we can. Because that's probably the only way that the island will get fiber sooner rather than later, would be coming together with some sort of build out.
And you know, the library systems might be a good way to go, because the libraries in each town, they do connect with each other over programming, and they might share programming, and that is a place where people go if they don't have access themselves. And so if we can do more programming and outreach through them, that might be an easier way to help cement that intertown connection.
I know like the municipal buildings and the schools have fiber backbone connected to the fiber backbone. Does the library as well?
They might. Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I think it all started with the Maine library network, right?
Yeah. exactly. I think they do.
I would say, because if they didn't, that would be a good thing to look at
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. No, I think that they have very good service because they have so many people there using it all the time. I think that they
Right.
probably do have fiber to the libraries. Yeah. But Wendell would know, and he's just not here today.
Yeah, my recollection that fiber cable started as part of the Maine library network.
Yeah.
And people piped off of it or whatever. I don't know what the term is, but you know, business, you know, and not businesses, but town government and such. So any other business?
Scott,
So-
because I was driving and I somehow was auto muted. If you voted on meeting, you know, approving meeting notes, I just want to make sure that I can register a positive if we had enough to make it be a quorum.
We did not have a quorum.
All right. Well, I was
Because-
yelling into my phone. I agree. I agree.
Because none of the three of you were at the last meeting.
Right.
So, but if you were at the March meeting, we could approve those.
I was at the March meeting. I'm pretty certain.
Okay. I sent around those minutes this afternoon as well, because we didn't have enough people at the April meeting to approve
Right.
March minutes.
So we could, I would entertain a motion to approve the March minutes.
Oh, you know what?
Were you there?
I think I called in halfway through, but I'm not listed on it, which I should be listed on it because I did call in halfway through. So I don't know whether that qualifies me enough to be there.
And were either of the other two here, were Pete and,
I was there, yeah. I just missed April. I was the
Okay.
12th.
I honestly don't remember.
we could amend the March minutes to add you in there, Lily.
That would be great, please.
So then you could even make a motion now, Lily.
I make a motion to approve the meetings of the meeting minutes for March.
And I second. All in favor? Aye.
I
Awesome. Well, there we go. We got 1 month to take care of. All right, well, so June, hopefully, so obviously Kathy will invite Keith and Kevin to
Yes,
join us,
and Brandon.
and Brandon.
And we'll see about getting Tremont back with us again next week too.
Okay,
Not able to join us, so we can talk about any further collaboration, whether it was CCI or anything else. So
okay, sounds good. All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Perfect.
thank you.
Thank you.
Later,
Have a nice day.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Good meeting. Bye-bye.